The night of October 2nd, 2025, descended upon Ukraine cloaked in a chilling, misty shroud, a perfect canvas for the terror that was about to unfold. At precisely 4 a.m., the silence was violently ruptured as a relentless swarm of over 20 Iranian-made Shahed drones and devastating Iskander missiles tore through the sky, just 50 miles from Ukraine's vital nuclear reactors. This was not a random assault. It was Vladimir Putin's brutal, calculated response to Ukraine's audacious public defiance. But as the metal birds of prey screamed closer, Russia was poised to receive a searing lesson in pain, one that would leave absolutely no room for regret. Miles away, deep within the reinforced concrete of a hardened bunker, a Ukrainian operator fixed his gaze upon a mosaic of digital displays, witnessing the unfolding aerial siege. First came the Shaheds, cheap, numerous, and slow, a terrifying flying wall of explosive payloads. Hot on their heels followed the true harbingers of destruction, the Iskander ballistic missiles. These were $3 million monsters, hurtling through the atmosphere at an unfathomable Mach 7, each a potential nation killer. This wasn't merely a target. It was the very pulse of Ukraine's energy infrastructure. This nuclear power plant, a critical nexus, supplied a staggering 50% of the country's electricity. To sever its connection meant to plunge a nation into paralysis. Putin's strategy was chillingly straightforward, a blunt, brute force assault aimed directly at the nation's beating heart. But Ukraine held a terrifying card of its own, poised to turn the tide of this digital war. Their strategy was one of profound elegance and deadly precision. At the core of their defense stood a U.S.-supplied Patriot PAC-3 system, yet the hardware was only half the narrative. The true heroes of this perilous night were the indigenous Ukrainian software and a groundbreaking electronic warfare system, codenamed Pokrova. Seamlessly integrated with NATO intelligence, they had transformed a state-of-the-art American missile shield into an unparalleled digital sniper rifle. At 4:02 a.m. local time, the Shahed swarm initiated its lethal dance. More than 20 of these low-flying, Iranian-made lawnmowers with wings skimmed mere feet above the serpentine Dnipro River, cunningly utilizing its radar shadow as a cloak. Simultaneously, Russia executed its first predictable maneuver. Their Kasuka-4 electronic warfare system began to vomit raw, blinding static into the night, attempting to smother all sensory input. But the Kasuka was a lumbering behemoth, burdened by a critical 1 to 2 second delay in its programming. In the lightning-fast realm of electronic warfare, 2 seconds was an eternity, a chasm that would prove fatal. With a mere flick of a switch, the Ukrainian operator countered. The domestically developed Pokrova system, powered by Allied code, didn't attempt to block the enemy signal. It hijacked it. Pokrova began meticulously crafting ghost targets, painting a fictitious reality where the phantom drones represented the most immediate and dire threat. It was whispering insidious digital lies directly into the swarm's collective mind, sowing panic and confusion among the Iranian guidance systems. Convinced they were deftly evading an unseen missile, 3 of the Shaheds collided violently, their wings crumpling as they tumbled into the dark river like drunken fireworks. What followed was a symphony of digital deception, a masterclass in electronic warfare. The operator, displaying breathtaking improvisation, further augmented the attack with a volley of decoy IR flares, skillfully luring the remaining, disoriented swarm away from their true objective. It was a resounding victory. In less than a minute, a staggering 60% of the initial drone wave had been neutralized. Yet, this triumph was merely the prelude to a far graver confrontation, a signal for Russia's deadliest weapons to enter the fray. The electronic noise and the chain of explosions had served as a dinner bell for Russia's big guns. The Iskanders had been alerted, and their sophisticated decoys were now screaming towards the target. At 4:03 a.m. local time, the true headliners took the stage. On the operator's screen, 8 menacing new contacts materialized, hurtling out of the upper atmosphere. Iskanders, Mach 7, each an investment of $3 million. But they had not come alone. In a desperate and novel tactic, they began deploying decoys mid-flight, causing the operator's HUD to explode with over 20 ghost targets. This was Putin's multi-million-dollar shell game, meticulously designed to overwhelm and confuse any defense. To guess incorrectly, to waste a $4 million interceptor on a worthless fake, carried an unthinkable prize, a nuclear meltdown. But Ukraine wasn't guessing. This was where the meticulously layered Allied defense transformed into a work of strategic art. First, the more economical tools were deployed for the less critical tasks. A nearby Norwegian NASAMS battery, fully integrated into the expansive defense network, launched a volley of its less expensive AMRAAM missiles. Their mission was clear: to eliminate the fakes. They acted as a high-speed sieve, shredding the decoys and clearing the digital airspace, allowing the true protector to acquire its targets with pristine clarity. This wasn't mere defense. It was a surgical dissection of an incoming catastrophe. Now, the Patriot's American-made AI sprang into action. Utilizing a Kalman filtering algorithm, a marvel of predictive mathematics, it didn't just perceive a missile's current location. It meticulously calculated its future trajectory. In under half a second, it analyzed the subtle, telltale signatures of atmospheric drag. The genuine missiles flew with a purpose-driven intent. The decoys, in stark contrast, were simply tumbling, lifeless shards of metal. The AI could discern the profound difference. All targets validated. The system reported with cold precision. The operator issued the command. The PAC-3s launched in a breathtaking kinetic dance, their launchers strategically hidden within the Zaporizhzhia hills, creating a flawless ambush angle the Russians had never anticipated. These interceptors carried no explosive warheads. They were 1,000-pound projectiles designed to kill with the pure, unadulterated force of kinetic energy. The first interceptor slammed into an Iskander at a combined speed exceeding 5,000 miles per hour, instantly vaporizing the $3 million missile into a harmless cloud of supersonic confetti. 5 of the 8 Iskanders were down, transformed into expensive, broken fireworks. It was a stunning triumph. Yet the lingering ghost of the Kasuka's jamming continued to hang in the air, disrupting communications and forcing the plant's emergency generators to roar to life. And the Russians, witnessing their brute force assault crumble, were now resorting to creative, desperate measures. The electronic chess match was about to enter a harrowing new phase. Just when victory seemed within grasp, the enemy's gambit shifted, plunging the battlefield into a new, treacherous fog of war. At 4:04 a.m. local time, the Kasuka evolved. It ceased its wide, noisy screaming and began a more insidious hunt. It swept the entire electromagnetic spectrum with a digital dragnet, desperately attempting to locate and crush Pokrova's agile, hopping frequency. The operator's screen flickered violently as a chilling digital fog enveloped his display. A lone Shahed, having somehow slipped through the chaotic maelstrom, was now dangerously close, just 10 miles out, its warhead glinting menacingly in the pale moonlight. In the Russian command bunker, a premature celebration erupted. They believed this was the decisive move, the one that would finally blind the Patriot system. But the immutable laws of physics had a different verdict. The Kasuka's broad sweep was akin to using a fire hose to locate a single glowing ember in a vast, dark forest. It wasted enormous amounts of energy, diluting its own power. Pokrova, conversely, wasn't sweeping, it was predicting. Leveraging Allied AI, its narrow, highly targeted pulses anticipated the Russian sweep and counterjammed it mere milliseconds before it could arrive. The operator, having endured enough, activated mirror mode. Pokrova no longer simply blocked the Russian signal. It captured it, amplified its raw power, and reflected it directly back, turning the Kasuka's own energy against itself. The remaining Shaheds, suddenly bathed in their own side's supercharged jamming signal, went completely haywire. Their navigation systems fried. 3 of them, convinced they were in an irreversible death spiral, simply slammed themselves into the hills. Putin's own jammer had, with exquisite irony, swatted his own drones out of the sky. The digital chess match had reached its zenith, and Ukraine was about to play an unexpected, devastating move. The electronic fog lifted, but the Russians had exhausted their electronic trickery. They were done with finesse. What came next was a desperate, low-altitude charge from the deepest shadows. At 4:05 a.m. local time, 6-caliber cruise missiles, the vaunted pride of their naval fleet, screamed in from a completely different axis. These were Putin's river rats, terrain-hugging predators, flying a mere 50 feet above the water, expertly utilizing the Dnipro's misty river valley as a perfect cloak. It was a classic multi-axis nightmare, meticulously designed to split the Patriots' attention and sneak a killer through the ensuing chaos. And here lay a critical vulnerability. The Caliber's own terrain-following radar was formidable, but it possessed a fatal flaw. The jagged, complex hills of Zaporizhzhia generated such an immense amount of ground clutter that its Doppler system became hopelessly clogged with errors. The Russians had deemed this an acceptable risk. The Ukrainians, however, recognized it as a meticulously laid trap. This was where the American-made LTAM's radar upgrade showcased its invaluable worth. It wasn't merely monitoring the sky. It was mapping the battlefield's intricate radar shadows in real time. As the Calibers ventured into the river valley, the Pokrova EW system began whispering a new, deceptive narrative into their guidance systems. It started feeding the missiles false data, convincing them that the ground itself was rising to meet them. The trap was sprung. A volley of cheaper AMRAAMs launched in a high arc, positioning themselves for devastating pop-up attacks on anything that dared to break cover. 4 of the Calibers, obediently climbing to avoid the phantom hills that Pokrova had painted onto their radar, flew directly out of the river's protective shadow and into the waiting jaws of the AMRAAMs. The other 2, attempting to frantically outmaneuver the perceived threat, were instantly met by 2 waiting PAC-3s. Putin's snakes in the grass had just been exterminated. But even as the skies cleared, the violence of the engagement triggered a new, chilling alarm, signaling a final, human-driven assault. The sheer ferocity of the low-altitude barrage, the reverberating explosions echoing off the hills, triggered the nuclear plant's proximity alarm, sending the entire facility into a state of high alert. At 4:06 a.m. local time, with all their advanced technology hacked, jammed, and blown out of the sky, the crews of the last 2 Iskanders took manual control. There was no more code, no more algorithms, just 2 Russian pilots flying by the very seat of their pants, executing erratic, unpredictable course corrections. They were a mere 5 miles out. Time to impact, under 30 seconds. In the Russian command bunker, a new wave of cheering erupted. This, they believed, was the triumph of the human spirit over the cold, unfeeling machine. For the Ukrainian operator, a sickening twist in his gut. How do you possibly shoot down a target that is actively trying to dodge, erratically, with human-driven panic? It was like attempting to hit a fly experiencing a violent seizure. With technology seemingly exhausted, the ultimate test of wills, man against machine, was about to unfold in the desperate final seconds. But the system had one final, chillingly logical answer. The operator wouldn't attempt to outfly the humans. He would remove his own human element from the equation. He authorized full autonomous mode. There was no hesitation. The final 2 PAC-3s launched, their onboard AI completely overriding and ignoring the operator's direct link. They were no longer merely tracking the missiles. They were tracking the pilots themselves. The Kalman filter wasn't just predicting a flight path. It was predicting human panic, meticulously calculating the overcorrections and desperate jerks of the controls. Putin's manual miracle met the cold, inescapable certainty of machine inevitability. The final 2 Iskanders were vaporized in a blaze of kinetic fury. The attack was over. The sky was miraculously clear. But Ukraine wasn't done. The electronic warfare battle hadn't just defended. It had meticulously gathered intelligence. When the Russian jammer screamed its disruptive signals, and when the Iskander launcher fired its devastating payload, they both inadvertently broadcasted their precise positions to the entire world. A fatal, irreversible mistake. The defensive triumph was not enough. A brutal lesson in consequences was about to be delivered. From the concealing shadows of the Zaporizhzhia hills, a humble $500 FPV drone, laden with a shaped charge, buzzed to life. It rocketed low across the terrain, skillfully utilizing the very same river valley the Russians had attempted to exploit, flying directly for the now exposed, multi-million-dollar Iskander launcher vehicle. Putin had desired a mirror. Ukraine had just sent back a postcard from hell, stamped with an explosive seal. The pride of Russia's missile forces erupted in a secondary fireball, its crew instantly vaporized. The hunter had, in a shocking turn of events, become the hunted. The board hadn't just been flipped, it had been set ablaze. On the Patriot's HUD, the screen zoomed in on the final desperate dance of the last Iskander. Its drunken, erratic weaving, a testament to the sheer, panicked human terror at the controls. In the Russian command bunker, the commander was frantically attempting to override his own system, screaming for manual updates that would, tragically, never come. And this is where the entire ferocious battle was distilled into a single, brutal equation of time. The Russian war machine, a lumbering beast of outdated hardware and rigid doctrine, required a full 15 seconds to process a threat and activate its defenses. The Ukrainian AI, running on advanced Ally processors, made the same critical decision in a mere 50 milliseconds. Putin's nuclear threat? It was the image of a child holding a multi-billion-dollar toy, threatening to break it. In Ukraine, the exasperated older sibling had simply and decisively taken the toy away. The final impact was silent and absolute. The PAC-3 connected. A kinetic energy transfer so profoundly violent it shredded the Mach 7 Iskander mid-flight. There are no Hollywood fireballs, no satisfying booms. There was only pure, unadulterated physics, transforming a $3 million nuclear-capable monster into a harmless rain of superheated rivets and metallic dust. Consider it akin to the Monroe effect, but on steroids. Instead of a focused chemical explosion, this was a focused application of motion itself. The PAC-3, a dense projectile of modern engineering, simply transferred its immense energy into the Iskander, and the Russian missile disintegrated from a sheer, overwhelming force. Physics had just delivered the punchline. As the last metallic fragments burned out in the atmosphere, a profound quiet descended over the battlefield. The jamming fields collapsed. The sky was undeniably clear, and the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, the resilient heart of a nation, continued its steady, quiet hum, completely untouched, utterly inviolate. So, let us tally the final score on Putin's billion-dollar disaster. His initial swarm of over 20 Shaheds, annihilated, with a significant majority taking themselves out of the sky through digital deception. His 8 vaunted Iskander missiles, 6 were shredded by the unyielding Patriots, and the final 2 were outsmarted by their own panic pilots. The nuclear power plant hummed along, completely untouched. But the true insult, the deepest cut, came at the very end. Ukraine didn't just survive the punch. They broke the aggressor's hand on the follow-through, transforming a defensive victory into a brutal offensive kill with that audacious, last-minute FPV strike. And that single act of battlefield dominance created a strategic nightmare for Moscow. They now faced a brutal dilemma. Do they keep their precious air defenses on the front lines to support a failing, desperate offense? Or do they pull them back to protect their own high-value targets from more of these humiliating counterpunches? Either choice represented a profound loss. They were now unequivocally forced to defend, instead of attack. But the deepest cut isn't etched on a map. It resonates within the hallowed halls of the Kremlin. The very myth of Russia's unstoppable arsenal, the boogeyman Putin had assiduously peddled for over a decade, died tonight in Ukrainian sky. The Russian Ministry of Defense would undoubtedly brand it a technical malfunction. But the world witnessed the stark truth. An emperor with no clothes, clutching a very expensive, very broken toy. That is a humiliation no amount of propaganda can ever hope to erase. And that brings us to the final, brutal lesson of this engagement. In the relentless crucible of modern warfare, it is not the exorbitant price tag of your weapon that ultimately matters. It is the profound intelligence and adaptability of the system wielding it. Russia brought $1 billion of inflexible brute force hardware. Ukraine brought a layered, adaptive defense powered by cutting-edge allied technology and their own brilliant, unwavering ingenuity. They had just taught the world a masterclass in this new age of conflict. Brains, meticulously backed by steadfast allies, will always beat a bully with a big budget. What other strategic implications might this redefine for global defense paradigms? And how might this lesson reshape future military doctrines worldwide?